All right, so here we go again. Welcome back. We're going to discuss today. I want to talk about change. I'm still studying cell biology and developmental biology, and I guess this would be a part of it, I guess, a branch. But this is about change, right? The something that as humanity that we all grapple with. The word change. But I want to look at it from a standpoint of biochemistry, of chemistry. And ladies, I'm gonna put you up on some game. Fellas might be a little tight with me on this one. I might lose my membership, my male membership here. But I have a daughter, so it's okay. I got to make sure I put my daughter up on game when she gets old enough. And so, ladies, this is a little G, a little some game for you ladies out there. Fellas too, though. Fellas too, because ladies play games. Ladies be playing games too. So fellas too. It's for everybody. We all can take some of this. Uh, I want to talk about the word change. The jargon in terms of chemistry is transmutation. In order for change to take place, it must be precipitated by a reaction. Okay, there's two types of change in chemistry, and in order for change to take place, it must be preceded or precipitated by one of the two reactions. Now, the first reaction is called a nuclear reaction. The second is called a chemical reaction. Let's break down nuclear first, real quick. A nuclear reaction takes place. Let's see. What should I use? The sun. Sun's a perfect example. Nuclear reaction is called a proton to proton or nuclear reaction, synonymous within the sun. This is how the sun radiates its light. What happens is hydrogen, which is the second most abundant element in the universe. Four hydrogen atoms actually collide, fusion. They collide, they fuse, and in the collision, one atom comes out of the four. The one atom that comes out of the four atoms go in, four hydrogen atoms go in, one helium atom comes out. That's called a nuclear reaction. Nuclear meaning there is a transmutation or a change within the nucleus. The nucleus is the core of the atom. The nucleus is at the very center, the very core of the atom. It's comprised of protons, electrons, quarks, neutrinos, and neutrons. Right. These are all the different particles, energetically charged particles within the nucleus. Right. So the nucleus is the very core of the atom. Okay, it's subatomic. Uh, when there's a change in the nucleus, there's a change in the element. Why? Real quick. Every atom has what's called an atomic number. The atomic number determines what type or kind of atom that atom is. I'll say it again really quick. Every atom has an atomic number. That number determines what element that atom is, right? If you study the periodic table, it'll explain that more in detail. So when there's a change in the atomic number, the element changes, okay? So as a result of hydrogen fusing and the nuclear reaction, a new atom comes out of this process called a helium. Now, a helium, going again to the periodic table, a helium is a completely different element from a hydrogen atom. All right, totally two different elements, uh, and that is, in a nutshell, right, a very simplified explanation of a nuclear reaction. The takeaway, what I really want to convey, the feature of this is that in a nuclear reaction, you have a totally different element from the preceding element. The element you start with completely changes to a new element. It's no longer the same element. It's not the same element in disguise. It's not the same element in makeup, in the mask. It's a totally different element. Hydrogen starts off in the nuclear reaction in the sun. Helium comes out on the other end. Input hydrogen, output helium. I just told you why. Change in atomic number changes the value in the element. Okay? Okay, let's stick with me. So it'll all make sense in a second. Bear with me. I'm giving you the science here, the formula. Now, then you have a chemical reaction, right? In a chemical reaction, let me think, what's a good element? I use the sun for nuclear. I could use chlorophyll, I could use chlorine, I could use water. I want to use water because that's so simple and everybody's familiar with water, right? Always keep it simple. KISS principle. Keep it simply simple. Water, if you boil water in a pot, it gets hot. We know that. And eventually it starts to give off what? Steam, right? Steam or water molecules leaving the solid state to a gaseous state, right? If you take that steam and you are somehow able to get an apparatus, some kind of magnifying microscope, and you are able to study the steam, you will realize that the atoms in the steam still consist of the same atoms that's in the pot. I'm going to say this again. The atoms in the steam still has exactly the same construct in terms of the atomic value and atomic number that the water is in the pot. So the gas, so the water, one can make the argument that yes, water did change. Water does change. It went from being a solid or liquid water to a gas. So it changed its state. Yes, indeed, it did change its state, but it didn't change its nature. I'm gonna let that sink in. The water changed its state, but its nature remained the same. Why? Because of what I just said. If you go and study the water in the pot and you study the gas, which is the steam, you'll realize the one thing they both still have in common is H2O. The atomic structure remains the same. All water did was change its state. It never changed its essential nature, its element. It's still the same exact. In the periodic table, it would still be H2O. Whereas when there's a nuclear reaction, you can go and study hydrogen atom. You can go and study the helium atom. You're going to get and realize that they're two completely different elements. Right? So the water changed its state, didn't change its nature. Changed its characteristic, didn't change its atomic value. Changed its personality, but again, its essence remains the same. All right, so now that we have a firm understanding on that, right? We grasp that. I made it as simple as possible, so it's easy to understand the chemistry. Now let's take it home. Let's bring it home. Ladies, if you were the dude who's physically violent, if he's he's a player, you know what y'all go through, what we all go through. Men, same thing. We can reverse it, right? Whatever the condition is, it really doesn't matter. Same movie, different characters, right? Whatever it is, if you're in a situation where you're trying to elicit change out of someone or something, you have to understand that in the nuclear reaction, it's a different element. In a chemical reaction, it's the same damn element existing in a different state. In other words, it's the lipstick on the pig. You understand? In a chemical reaction, they're changing the makeup. They're putting on a different mask. They're changing certain personality traits. But the reality is at core, in the nucleus of the person, in their very being, they're still the same person. They don't that hasn't changed, right? So water changes its state. Ladies, he might change his state, but he's still the same person. Fellas, she might change her state, but she's still the same person. If she don't cook and she starts cooking for a while, she changed her state up on you. But you gotta understand that the core, the essence of who the person is has not changed. And it's not to say that a person can't change or don't want to change. I'll explain in a few seconds. Give me a second. I'm going to explain why they don't, why we won't. I'm going to explain in a second, but bear with me. So water changes its state, but the gas is still the same particles, the same elements, the same exact element. Hydrogen changes to helium in a nuclear reaction. So in order for us to change, there must be a nuclear reaction within the person. There must be a nuclear, I want to drive that home. I'll say it again. There must be a nuclear reaction within the person. Nuclear, in terms of taking it out of chemistry and going into now individual entities, organisms, it must be a change within the soul of the person. It must be an internal change in the structure of the person's being, deep down inside, right? It's got to be like a shift in their being, in their bowels, in their innermost core parts of them. If that change hasn't taken place, then what you're witnessing is you might, if you do see some changes, right? You're witnessing a chemical reaction, ladies and gentlemen. You're witnessing a chemical reaction. Why is this a fact and not just some theory? It's a fact, right? Because we are scientific entities. We are evolutionary organisms, evolutionizing. We are scientific entities. We are scientific beings. We are science. Science has manufactured us. We have to obey the laws of science. It's indisputable. We have to obey the laws of science. We have to obey the laws of gravity. There are four fundamental forces in the universe: electromagnetic, strong force, weak force, and gravitational force. There are no exemptions or nullifications. If you are living if you are a resident or an inhabitant of the planet, you are obeying these laws. Now, if you're on the moon, if you're on another planet outside of our stratosphere and atmosphere, then yeah, there's different rules because the pull of gravity on Earth is not the same as the pull on the moon. That's why you have people bouncing around on the moon. There's gravity there, but its force is just so much weaker there. So, that's why your weight on the moon and your weight on the Earth is totally different because of the gravitational force. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, there are rules, scientific rules, scientific laws, physics that we are bound by. Bound by. You don't believe me? Go jump out your window. Gravity will show you that you are bound by these rules, right? So now I want to explain to you. It's not that the person doesn't want to change, right? She might really want to change, fellas. He might really want to change, ladies. He might genuinely want to change. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you some magic right now. Here's the magic. You ready? Why the person cannot change is this. Some of you might have heard of Galileo, right? If you study some of the writings of Galileo, there's something he wrote on inertia. 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 Yeah, inertia. And inertia is pretty much, just to keep it really simple again and not confuse and sound too crazy, inertia is just simply an object's built-in resistance to change. I'll say it again. It's a built-in resistance to change in all matter. It's matter's innate, inborn DNA resistance to change. So there's a resistance, an innate resistance to change in all matter. Inertia was first put forth by Galileo. Later on, what's his name? Newton came with the first law of motion, which is object in motion stays in motion. That's inertia right there. Think about it. An object or a person in a certain trajectory, right? Or a certain vector field. You could say vector field. A person moving in a certain direction will stay in that direction. That's the law. An object going in certain object in motion stays in motion. That's inertia, right? You're staying in that motion. You don't want to change. Inertia says in all matter, there's a built-in resistance to change. It's called the resistive force. There's a resistive force that prevents matter, objects, things from changing. Newton came and expounded on that and says, yes, if you're in motion, you're going to stay in motion. If you're at rest, you're going to stay at rest. Same concept. If you're at rest, that object is likely to stay at rest. If it's in motion, that object is likely to stay in motion. Now, there are other parts of the laws, right? But I'm trying to just point out why we don't change. I'm trying to point out why we don't. We might want to. We might have the intentions to. In the court of law, they call it recidivism, right? If you know anything about courts or laws and stuff like that, it's a jargon for criminals. It's called recidivism. It's the person's relapsing into their old ways. They might have been rehabilitated while they were in some kind of programs, but then they relapse. Whether it's going back into alcohol, if you were kleptomaniac, you like to steal, so you revert. Right, you were healed, and then you lapse. You go back into whatever the sin or the crime of your taste or nature is. So that's why we don't change because of that the built-in scientific physics of inertia, uh, the built-in restrictive force to change. There's a built-in resistance to change. And if you don't believe that's true, you see it every day around you. Look at our politics, right? Conservatives want to keep things. It's called for in the political arena, they call it the status quo, right? In the political arena, inertia is called status quo. Keep ish as it is. Let it stay the way it is. Because what the word conservative has inertia built into its definition. If you look it up, right? It won't say inertia, but if you're smart enough, you'll see inertia in the word conservative, right? So you see it in our politics, you see it in our society, you see it in everything, our institutions. I mean, it's everywhere. You look all around you and you see the science, the physics of inertia. It's everywhere. You just have to have your awareness, your consciousness. You just have to be aware of that. If you're not aware, then you won't see it. But if you're aware of that science, you will see it. So this is why, but here's the thing, having this knowledge does give you, now I don't want to say, people watch this and say, oh, nobody can change. People, people are going to all going to say, oh, wait, no, people could change. He's lying, or, he don't know, he talking about people. Look, it's a rule of thumb, okay? It's a rule of thumb. It's a yardstick by which you measure and make your decisions. It's not, I'm not saying that it's there, you can change, because remember, I didn't say we can't. I said there's a nuclear, but it has to be a nuclear reaction. Remember, I prefaced everything I said with that it has to be a nuclear reaction in order for someone to change. It can't just be a chemical reaction. Because if a chemical reaction means recidivism, they'll change chemically, but their nature remains the same. So that means eventually it's going to lapse back. As a matter of fact, here's the proof. When gas, when the steam from the water goes into the air, right? The steam actually, when it goes into the air, it goes to what's called what is it? Condensation? Yeah, I believe it's called condensation, right? It condenses, right? And then it becomes with the clouds, it actually goes through a process of condensation, and then we get precipitation, and that's called rain. That's actually the water cycle. I just explained to you the water cycle. So the same steam that goes up condensed with other molecules and particles in the air and clouds and forms the cloud. And then when it becomes what's the word, saturated, as a result of saturation, we have precipitation, and then we have rain, and that's rain, right? So interestingly enough, I just proved it, and I didn't even realize, I'm realizing that right now, that the same fluid, right, gives off steam. And because there's not a change in the nature, just in the chemical, right, from a solid, which is liquid, to a gas, then it goes into the universe and, condense with other properties and materials, and returns back to what? In the form of rain, water. That's the textbook definition of recidivism right there. It went right back to what it was before the change. So, and that's what that's what the word recidivism means, to lapse back into what you were originally. So we see it right there. I just explained it to you. I just gave you an example of recidivism, that the same smoke, or the same steam, actually returns back to the earth in a form of rain, and that is water, H2O. So it never changes. So that's what I mean when I say people don't change. It's, the word life is hard. It's not easy. I'm sure, many will agree. If it's easy for you, God bless you. Best of luck. More power to you. But for most, I know it's hard, and you need to make the best decisions you can so that you can have the best earthly experience in corporeal form while we're here, because we're light beings having a corporeal experience. And so you need to know how to make the best decisions you can to make this experience as maximize your potential as much as possible, and make this experience as pleasurable, as happy, as much happiness as you can possibly get out of this crazy world that we live in and occupy. So having this knowledge and this information is advantageous, because it gives you a little leg up, so to speak. It gives you that little something, so that, you can assume, right? Some things. You always say don't assume. No, that's a lie. Assume, Trust me, you should always assume. Never, don't judge a book by the cover. Why not? Judge the book by the cover. You stupid. You should. That's all. If that's all you have, right? Life sometimes deals you cards. You just got to play them. If the book is showing you this, if this is all the book shows you, you don't have time to read it, you didn't get a chance to read it, and all it gave you was the cover, sometimes that split decision could be a matter of life or death, right? Whether it's life or death, financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. So sometimes you got to judge that book by the cover. That's fine. But I'll tell you this too. Having this knowledge, this information, it puts you in a state of Herculean convictions. It puts you in a state where your convictions are so adamant. You have an adamant is the hardest stone, one of the hardest stones. Flint is actually the hardest. I think adamant is like the second hardest stone in the universe. Flint, I believe, is the first. Doesn't matter, flint or adamant. You become a flint in your conviction. You become adamant in your conviction, the stone, your belief, and that is what you need to guide you through this world. You have to have that strong, determined, stubborn conviction in believing in something. So if somebody's showing you something, and you get your dendrites, which are the cell's sensory system. Your cells have sensors, and your sensory system is going off, and your alarms, flags. Believe in that. Believe it. And so what if you're wrong? It's okay to be wrong. Look, I'd rather be wrong, trusting my gut, than be right, not trust, than found out I was right, not trusting my gut. I'm gonna say it again. I'd rather be wrong, trusting my instincts and my inner man, my spirit man, my that power in you, that guidance force in me. I'd rather be wrong trusting that than find out that I was right, but I didn't trust myself. You know what I'm saying? So either way, you know what I mean? Like, come on. So again, wrapping it up, people can change, but 9 out of 10 times they won't, because of the laws I explained to you. And also, it takes a lot to have a nuclear reaction. A person has to really dig deep down, especially if I'm 40 years old, especially if you're in your 40s, late 30s, even mid 20s. You've been doing something all your life a certain way. You've been thinking, you've been on a certain way. Look, there's something called a natural resonance, or resonant frequency, your resonant frequency. If you've been in that resonant frequency, that your natural resonant, which is resonant frequency, if you've been in that frequency for 25, 35, 40 years, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's damn near, it's close to impossible. You need, it's got to be something. Look, again, like I said, study the laws, understand chemistry a little bit, and trust your gut. Don't be a sucker. Don't be a fool. Understand the physics, the laws. Everyone is subject to them. Everyone. I don't care who they are. And if they're human and they walk the earth, trust it. Trust those laws. All right. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you got something out of it. All right. Till next time, I'm gonna keep cooking and add a whole new meaning to cooking those books.